There is a loneliness epidemic. The U.S. Surgeon General advises that the mortality rate of social disconnection is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, and very similar also, and even more greater than obesity as well as physical inactivity. So I'm very pleased to kick off season 3 of the CG Hour as we dive into the healing effects of social connections at work. Let's start the countdown. Welcome everybody to the CG Hour. We are kicking off season 3. Can you believe it? We are in our 3rd year of the show. And for those of you that are new, this is a show where we bring to you business leaders, industry experts, as we talk about the latest topics in workplace as well as technology and a variety of industries. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. Welcome to the show. My name is Fanny Dunagan and I'm the host. And today we're going to talk all around social connections at work. We have an epidemic right now around loneliness and isolation, and we spend so much time at work that we really want to do a better job at nurturing those social connections in the workplace. So for those of you out there that are tuning in live, I encourage you to also build your connections in the comments of the feed as well. I challenge you to connect with 3 new people in the comments of the feed. Build your network, introduce yourself, tell people what you do, tell people where you're tuning in from, and then work to find like-minded people as well. If you're tuning into this show and this topic, you know you're surrounded by people who care and know that connections matter. So thank you for joining us today. And before we kind of kick it off, I want to play a research video that we did to set the context for this show around the loneliness epidemic as well as the healing power of social connections at work. So let's play that now. Thank you for joining us on the CG Hour. I see numerous people tuning in. I see Lori McGovern from Northern California tuning in, Mary from Connecticut, Jeff from Dallas, and Moyer from Noida, India as well, across the world. So thank you all for joining us. And I want to welcome our guests today, starting from our right here, Melissa Essler. Welcome to the show. How are you, Melissa?
I'm great, Fanny. Thank you so much for having me today.
Absolutely. Melissa is the Salesforce Alliance Manager at CG Infinity. Melissa, tell us a little bit about yourself and why this topic is so important to you.
Absolutely. So like you said, Fanny, I'm the Salesforce Alliance Manager, which literally means my entire job is relationship building, which means I have the best job in the entire world because I get to build relationships all day, every day. And that works both within my organization and with our Salesforce friends as well. So making sure that those relationships are strong, that they're healthy, that they're meaningful. That's everything.
For today.
Exactly. That is exactly today's topic.
Yeah. And welcome Dr. Alise Cortez. She is an organizational psychologist as well as Chief Ignition Officer at Gusto Now. How are you?
I am great. I'm here. How bad could it be, right? Happy to be here.
Yeah. Tell us about yourself and why this topic is so meaningful to you.
So at my organization, Gusto Now, we are out to activate meaning and purpose in organizations, in their culture and their leadership, to increase the connection, engagement, relationship, innovation, and retention. And so what we are doing is really, we're cultivating the emotional and the spiritual connections inside the organization.
I love it. And then last but not least, we have Janet Robertson, former CIO at Raytheon Technologies. Welcome, Janet. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Fanny. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. This is a passion topic for me, and it's, as a technology leader, that so much of that social connection and engagement really goes unnoticed, and it's so important not only to cultivating talent retention, but really building trust across an organization to improve productivity. So,
absolutely. And for those of you in the audience, as we kind of go through the questions and our discussion today, feel free to drop questions for our panelists. I'll be monitoring the feed and pulling in your questions and feedback as well. So as you kind of saw from the research video, we have a loneliness epidemic, and I think it was very much accelerated during the pandemic. And I wanted to just kind of go around the panelists and have everyone share. This topic may not be a comfortable topic for some, but I encourage everyone to kind of lean into the discomfort, and let's all be brave together and talk about this openly and authentically and with our vulnerabilities as well. So I'm going to kick off with Melissa. The U.S. Surgeon General says we are in a loneliness epidemic. Have you seen evidence of that, and especially at work?
100%. I think especially during COVID and everybody transitioning from being in a society where we're together so often to that abrupt stop and moving into a space of isolation. I think that's a really rough transition for a lot of people to make, and especially as we pivoted to try to figure out how do we create that connection, and we had to figure out how to do that very, very quickly. And different organizations succeeded at that in different ways. As research came out, as we all figured out what worked, what didn't, we had to experiment. We had to figure out what worked for certain people, how to really engage people, how to really not only create that sense of connection professionally, but also really lean into it personally in a way that we might not have before. I think for all of us, we got to know our coworkers in a different way, because that's what really created that sense of professional connection as well. It wasn't just we work together and we do this project together. It was also, what are you doing right now? And I see your kids in the background, and show me your cat. And, you know, what are we doing for virtual happy hour today? But all of those things really matter, right? And that's what engaged you and made you feel like you still had a sense of place. And it still does to an extent, because now we're in this hybrid environment for many of us, and we've learned how to work remotely and with teams across the globe and with people that we may never encounter face to face, but these takeaways continue, and being able to lean into those helps create that sense of comfort and relationship and still combat that loneliness.
Yeah. Dr. Alise, in your work with organizations, Did you see that loneliness kind of creeping into the workplace?
I did. During 2020, when this first began, I got several calls from different organizations who were obviously mostly working from home saying, Mayday, Mayday, can you help? Can you help bring us together? We don't know how to connect anymore. We're not seeing each other eyeball to eyeball. Can you conduct some sessions around well-being? And what was really interesting was there were people who were maybe more introverted that were just really happy with this new arrangement and liked being able to work quietly at home. And then the extroverts were like going crazy, right? And being just so lonely. But then there were also, though, the interesting thing was all of the individual scenarios where some people were like, work is my outlet because I have a really quiet home life, and this is where I get fed socially, and that's not available to me anymore. And then, of course, the people that were struggling with, how do I school my kids and work and everything else? And so there were so many competing interests and needs, and yet at the same time, people were still feeling lonely and isolated and lost.
And Janet, I mean, being a CIO, a lot of IT was necessary to keep the whole organization running virtually. But then the impacts of everyone working from home, what did you kind of observe from your side?
We had a unique situation that because at RTX, we were coming together 2 months after the pandemic started. And we brought together two very large organizations that a lot of people didn't know each other. They're now having to come together to work together as a team. So in these mergers and acquisitions, it was the perfect storm that came together where they didn't know each other, they didn't trust each other, and they had no opportunity to actually build that connection. So we had this exponential challenge that came in, and while most of our technology teams were remote in different offices, now they were extra remote and they didn't know one another. So the building of that trust, really just the isolation alone, feeling like they were coming together to a new organization. So imagine starting a new job, being lonely, being isolated. You feel lonely when you start a new job anyway because you don't know anyone. And this really hit hard for us. And some were able to manage through it a little better than others. And unfortunately, as a leader of a large organization, I had some representatives of my team take their own life. And it really changed how I acted as a leader, my outlook and perspective. In technology, everything's ones and zeros, and then you are on deadlines, and perfection is always there. But how do you accept the fact that your people that you're responsible for are struggling so much? And so we really changed how we approached this leadership. All of my leaders really leaned in very closely, and we'll talk a little bit more about how we approached some of that, but it was incredibly impactful to me as a leader. And it's kind of made it my mission to really get the word out that it's not just a soft skill, it's actually a necessary skill to be truly a genuine leader when it comes to managing your people and how they are.
Absolutely. And we can really see the impacts of that when it's not addressed. And one of the things that we really wanted to do with this show is kind of bring things out in the open and have these kind of discussions and give all of us permission to speak about these topics. Dr. Alise, from your experience, what were some of the other challenges that you kind of saw come out of this kind of disconnection in organizations?
What was interesting for me as in 2020 is when the whole world stopped was first observing how people's lives were so dramatically disrupted. People were confused by that. And that gave them time for pause and consideration. A lot of people really considered, I think I want more from life than what I'm currently having. And now I see things that aren't working anymore, which really became very upsetting for a lot of people as they were looking at and evaluating their current situations. And then when we went into that wave of, okay, it's time to come back to work, come back to the office, and people are like, I don't really want to do that because I like the freedom and the autonomy of how my life works when I'm not spending an hour and a half to 3 hours commuting, et cetera, and all the traffic that came with that. And so there was this idea of the force back into the organization that people were resisting. And back to what you said, Janet, about trust, what was interesting was a lot of the leaders that were really encouraging this were, that what they would say behind closed doors was, well, I don't trust them that they're working if I don't see them. And now, if you're an employee and you recognize that you're not being trusted, you're not going to go the extra mile. So now we have productivity issues, and now we have engagement issues. People start doing the quiet quitting, the great resignation happened, all these sort of things. And it's all understandable when you see how much the apple cart was upset. In my view, though, I think that the pandemic did something pretty incredible in that it forced us, through the shared heart attack that we had across the world, into a higher consciousness where we wanted more from our lives, we expected more from our lives, and we expected more from our work and our leaders and what we experienced with over 35% of our lives.
It's almost like the pandemic was a big pause and reminder for all of us to kind of reevaluate too.
Absolutely.
Melissa, as CG Infinity kind of navigated that remote and now hybrid model, what kind of positive social connections have you kind of seen around programs and initiatives?
I think you both kind of nailed it when you talked about, as leaders, it's one of the responsibilities to make sure that it's not just a soft skill, there's intentionality behind it, and that you are trusting your employees. And I think CG Infinity's done a really good job with making sure that our employees feel trusted and they feel validated and they have autonomy with our hybrid work schedule. I think that alone has been really impactful and empowering. And I think productivity has increased as a result of it. So rather than getting the quiet quitting and the resignation, it's been great. We've had wonderful outcomes for our company and for our customers and our clients and for ourselves. That autonomy for me is something that I know I appreciate so much. But along with that, we are very intentional in making sure that we have our home-based check-ins, that we make sure that our teams are connecting, and we make sure that we do it in person as frequently as possible. So part of that is making sure that we are intentional with coming into our offices a couple of days or 3 days a week and connecting in person, and that we do have team building events, and that for part of it, it's just about fun. Part of it's about work, but part of it is truly about connecting and getting to know each other as individuals, and doing company-wide events that involve our families and bringing our kids and our partners, and making sure that everybody gets that true sense of community, so that we talk about our work lives but also our personal lives, and we recognize that those impact each other. And that's been very, very impactful.
Yeah, and for those of you in the audience, drop into the comments what successful initiatives that you've seen in your workplace to build those social connections so that we can share ideas in the feed as well. Now, Janet, I know that you put in quite a very important program and initiative to kind of counter those kind of isolation and feelings of loneliness. Tell us about that program you put in.
I purposely addressed in my big town halls. Initially, we had such a large team. I wanted to make sure that I had that tight connection. So every single month, instead of quarterly or instead of bi-yearly, I wanted to connect with my entire team, not just my leadership and not just the flow down. We did monthly town halls where it was not scripted. It was more casual, and we started having conversations about what are they doing? How do we celebrate different traditions around the world? What are they doing for their kids back to school? Mm-hmm. How is everybody creating a new hobby over from home? You know, people started gardening or crafting and different things. But really when it changed was I decided to do a mental health segment in one of my town halls. And my leaders really stepped up. And it was a casual conversation, but they introduced themselves so vulnerably that it resonated through the entire organization. They shared their struggles with anxiety and taking medication. They struggled with being an introvert in an extroverted role. They shared that one of my employees had lost her mother and how she reached out to the psychology offering that our company had provided. And then the response was so overwhelming and moving people were in tears, and I realized I wasn't doing enough. The virtual happy hours were not enough. The fun wasn't enough. We had to actually kind of get real. And I brought in a professional. I hired, well, didn't hire, they were kind enough to share with me on one of my next town halls real advice on how to support each other in the workplace. And Fieri leadership, Sarah Lawson, was unbelievable. She gave her time to us and shared with us about her experiences in the military. She was clearing minefields in Afghanistan as a squad leader. Talk about battlefield stress, right? How do you empty that stress bucket, and how do we support each other? And the results were unbelievable. The team, suddenly people that were not on the same teams were supporting each other and doing check-ins with each other. So it's not just the leadership down, it's across the board. How do they support each other? And we took it to that next level. It was unbelievable, the response, and how many people really resonated with that kind of support for each other. It was unbelievable, and it was surpassed my expectations. I get emotional when I think about it.
Yeah, it made an impact. We have a question in the audience from Jinyan from Denver. He says, what can employees do or say when they feel disconnected from their work culture? And what's one thing leadership can do to check in without crossing the work-personal lifeline? Maybe I'll start with you. Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of that work-personal boundary has shifted during the pandemic because our cats are now on the Zoom calls and our parents or kids are running up behind. But it is really based on the employee's comfort level. So that line moves based on what you're willing to share. Being a genuine leader, it makes you approachable. But as an employee, if you don't feel that connection to your leader, that you can actually say that I'm having trouble, find someone that you can. I think that your comfort level in approaching that, hey, I'm not doing well today, find your battle buddy at work. We called them battle buddies, and it was, who can you tell how you empty your stress bucket to? Maybe it's talking to your sister every day, or it's getting on the bike and doing your exercise. Someone to help hold you accountable to managing your stress and what you do to help empty that stress bucket. I stole that from Sarah. But I think if your leader isn't someone that's you feel comfortable approaching, find somebody that you can, that will support you and give you that kind of guidance. I think mentorships are always a great thing to leverage, but find somebody, don't hide it, and I'd say definitely reach out to somebody that you feel like you can trust at work to be that battle buddy to help hold you accountable in managing your stress.
Absolutely. Alise, I know you coach a lot of organizational leaders. Any advice that you give to them around how to create that open dialogue with their employees?
I was just thinking of that when Janet was talking. Thank you for that cue.
Yeah.
So what I was present to was just how important, we talked before in our prep calls about how important the leadership journey is that we're working, everyone walking the planet is wounded. The question is, to what extent have we addressed our wounds so that we're not foisting them on other people, especially those who depend on us as followers. So for leaders to be able to do the hard work of making sure they've created a psychologically safe place where people aren't going to be rebuked if they say, I don't feel like coming in today. I'm not going to invent an excuse that, oh, my dog just got run over or whatever. It's just, I need to take the day off today. And that's safe and celebrated, and then someone's inquiring about you. So the work, and Janet was talking about this earlier, the work of really what I call in our business is doubling down on humanity. Teaching us to be more fully human with ourselves and each other so that we can be the human that people can come to when there's something that's bothering them, something that's weighing on them. And that's first an inside job. And that's why the work that I love doing is helping to cultivate that inner journey, that self-reflection to understand what's happening for their lives and how they've gone along their own healing process to be able to be that for those that are depending on them.
I love these terms that we're coming together with, doubling down on humanity, battle buddies. Those are great terms for us to make note of. We want to play for you a video that was created by one of our very own CG Infinity, Lisa Jordan, to kind of just illustrate and reflect about the importance of social connections at work. So let's play that now.
Work is a team sport. I think everyone understands the value of collaborating with your team for a better work product. But work is also social. The friendships we form at work create a sense of community and camaraderie that builds confidence to propel us forward as individuals. And our work friends make work fun.
I love all the comments that we're getting in the feed. Ravi shared that when you trust your people, the people want to reciprocate with integrity, and it embosses confidence in both the organization as well as the employees. And then Mary said, effective leadership presence is indispensable in all activities or events. So true. We got a question in the feed about now that we have Gen AI and AI and even more technology, how can we what do you anticipate is the positive as well as the negative impact of AI and technology towards social connections? Melissa?
This is such a hot topic right now, and it's such an evolving topic.
Yeah.
When thinking of kind of the positive places that this can go, I think that there are so many potential positive outcomes. AI has the potential to really help hone into nuances of an individual's kind of patterns, right? Mm-hmm. So when you think of the positive patterns, when you think of habits, when you think of feeling a little bit known, AI can really support that as well. I think it can also pick up on some of those negative patterns and hopefully even red flag some of those things when you do start noticing some of those negative patterns. So from a mental health perspective, from a noticing perspective, there's some safety there as well. But even within a virtual workplace type environment, those little nuances of feeling known, of feeling seen, it's one more level. And yes, it's not a human level, but it's another noticing level that hopefully we can start noticing those patterns with.
Absolutely. Alise, what have you kind of seen of the impact of AI and technology on social connections?
I was thinking when Melissa was talking, it's amazing what I appreciate about the AI tool, and I have used it myself quite a bit. One thing that is an interesting application is, imagine you're going to go talk to a teammate about something that's bothering you. Maybe the way they're working it's just not working for you, but you don't know how to open the conversation. Mm-hmm. Strangely enough, you can actually go to ChatGPT and say, I want to have a productive conversation with my colleague. We're working together over a high stress project, and I don't know where to begin. Can you give me 3 things to consider about opening the conversation? And amazingly, it produces for you.
Yes.
I have actually used ChatGPT, the tool personally, when I wanted to be able to talk to a friend about something that was bothering me, and I didn't know how to open the conversation. I've done it myself, and I've had many people inside organizations use it that way as well. So it helps you get outside of your own head and thinking about how can I access other known aspects of how to address conflict or relationship issues that you just wouldn't consider on your own.
Especially when you can share those personalized details as well. So then it's not just completely
Yes.
random. It becomes a very personalized tool
Absolutely.
that helps support what you're trying to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Janet, what have you kind of seen as the role of AI and technology in fostering social connections?
I think it is efficiency. In our applications in some of the technology organizations, we're able to leverage machine learning, AI, both classic and generative, in improving our productivity. So we've got co-pilot development that's coming to the forefront in the technology space. When you're focused on truly human valuable work and less of the monotony and the repetitive tasks, I know it's kind of a long way around to it, but really you get to do that collaboration and the strategic work with more of your time. So it's a little bit of a different twist than just a direct connection to the artificial intelligence, but it's how do we make our lives, our heavy lifting work a little bit easier, so then we're collaborating, we're social connecting, and we're strategizing with our teammates and our peers and our leadership, rather than doing the heavy lifting work on most of our hours during the day.
Absolutely.
And how validating for creativity, right? And that's something that really does fill your bucket there.
Yeah. And for those of you in the audience, let us know how you're using AI or technology to foster better connections as well. Now, Melissa, you work very closely with Salesforce.
I do.
They had one of the biggest AI conferences, Dreamforce, last year. And is there any kind of case studies that they've illustrated or you can share to kind of give us a kind of like a working model of how AI can do that?
I mean, there's so many different ones. I think a lot of what's going on with AI right now is helping to create a more personalized experience. So I think a lot of what we feel like and face as individuals is not being seen, not feeling seen, feeling isolated. And that leads to so many of these struggles, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's personally, professionally. And with AI, you're able to use all of these tools to make you feel more seen. So even tools as a consumer, AI is creating all of these wonderful opportunities to feel more seen. So you might be shopping for something and you're like, oh, this is the best personalized experience ever. It knows that I really enjoy red as my favorite color and I've purchased this before, so it knows that I like this, and it leads you down this path where you feel validated, you feel seen, even from something like being a consumer. And all of those little nuances, again, just create that sense of connection of you're seen.
Yes. Alise, Jim Smelly in the comments really liked your ChatGPT idea. He said, I've never heard of ChatGPT as a source for hard conversations. What a great idea.
All right, Jim, go for it.
Yes, for sure.
Courageous conversations
Right,
via
exactly.
ChatGPT.
That's where it's at.
ChatGPT doesn't have our baggage. It just gives us neutral suggestions, right? Janet, I mean, you've led organizations that are very, very highly technical, heavy reliance on accuracy, and people's performance are measured by productivity, efficiency, very like kind of hard numbers, right? And I know some folks may be thinking, oh, what is all this fluffy stuff that we're talking about around loneliness and emotions and vulnerability and all that? But what would you say to that? Like, how would you address that when you're trying to build a culture to nurture connections? How can organizations view it differently than the fluffy stuff?
It boils down to those numbers. I can tell you from firsthand experience that talent retention, everybody talks about the war on talent. If your people are connected and they feel like they trust their leadership and they feel like they have a place, they're not going to leave. You are never going to be able to compete with the next highest paid position or your best talent trying to be recruited away. But if they're truly happy, they're going to stay. So talent retention is an absolute number one metric that you can truly measure. Your attrition levels, I can tell you mine went from 7.5% to under 2%. And that was a direct reflection of everyone feeling like they were a part of something bigger and connected to the mission of the organization. Productivity is another, on-time delivery. When people feel like they can reach out across the aisle and say, I need help today, I'm going to miss my deadline, but I really don't have it in me, can you cover for me? And people feel truly willing to help because we're all in this together. Those are numbers that you can measure. Your productivity goes up. Ours went from in the 70% on-time delivery to over 97%. Those are real measurable results that leaders can get behind. But I can say with 100%, it's not a check the box. You have to be a truly authentic and genuine leader in order to foster that culture and really make it real and make it measurable and make it tangible for your employees. But it goes viral. As soon as a leader sets an example of being a real person, it does not take away your power or your authority as a leader to be a human being. It actually makes you a real connected person, and you build trust that way. And I see so many leaders follow this hierarchical model that you have to be tough, you have to pretend like you work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you never have a bad day. That's not real, and nobody believes that.
Yeah. I'm going to add a word to that. Vulnerability builds trust. Absolutely. Showing that you are vulnerable, showing those weaknesses that every single person has,
100%.
Builds trust.
And people can always spot the fakes. Like
They
if
can.
you're just doing it to check off the box, it's very transparent and people can spot that.
They can.
Yeah. Alise, you are an organizational psychologist and logotherapist. Tell us what those roles mean and what are the importance of it and how that approach can be applied to organizations.
Such a great question. So increasingly what we're seeing is that the role of HR and leaders is caring for people. And so as an organizational psychologist, what we do is we're helping to teach leaders and organizations through their culture to create an environment where people feel cared for through the processes they go through, the procedures, how they do their work, how they're evaluated, how they're thanked, all those kinds of things that make them feel like this is a place that I can belong. This is a place where I'm valued. This is a place where I'm willing to spend my precious life. Because that's what we're doing, is we're living in our work. The logotherapy part of it, so logo is a Greek word, going to Greece soon, a Greek word meaning, and then of course therapy is healing, so healing through therapy. So that place of how do we actually create an organization and a culture where people feel that sense of what I'm doing matters. It makes a difference. And so meaning is registered along our value system. So what you find meaningful will be different from what I find meaningful. So then it becomes the work of our teammates and our leaders to understand what is it that we find meaningful so that we can then thank and appreciate people according to what it is they value. When we do that, meaning just skyrockets. And now what we have is higher energy, higher well-being, higher mental health. And people are much more motivated to perform, to persevere, to stick around, and they feel like, gosh, why would I want to go someplace else? These people actually care about me here.
Yeah. Going back to that retention, right? Yeah. And then being excited to go to work and then having the enthusiasm for our work goes such a long way too.
What a concept, yeah.
Well, if you want innovation and you want excitement, have people that are really motivated to want to go after making everything better for everyone around.
Yes. Well, I want to share a video that we have just to illustrate all these points about just how deep social connections can mean at work. We wanted to look back at 2023 and some of the social gatherings at CG Infinity, our sponsor here. And so you can kind of really see some of the initiatives and programs that maybe you can also adopt in your organizations. Let's play that now.
partner with a client at CG Infinity, we begin from establishing a relationship.
Don't lose hope because you got this.
I think you can see a wide range of illustrations of what's possible when we put our effort into fostering social connections at work, from cultural celebrations to volunteering, which is a huge give back to the community as well as community service, and then also bringing the kids to work, right? Involving family, involving them in where we work and where we spend so much time of our day. So hope those ideas spark something in you as well. For this final segment, we wanted to kind of talk about solutions, right? What can we do? What's next? What programs and initiatives can we put in to foster these kind of connections? So I'll start over here with Melissa. I know that right now you are working in a hybrid kind of environment. What do you kind of see as other initiatives or things that can be put in place for our audience and ideas?
I'll touch on one that you actually pointed out a moment ago and that you saw in the video. One of the things that we've been doing at CG Infinity is volunteering together, which has been a great way to connect us across locations, across offices, even though we have locations across the globe. It's been a partnership with Salesforce where we give back 1% of our time to pledge our time to fight against hunger, and we volunteer at local food banks and other local organizations. And we get to work with colleagues that, again, we might not see in person frequently, but we come together once a month to volunteer together. And we're not doing our traditional work. We're not talking about technology and the projects that we're doing together there, but we're doing something that's really meaningful. And we're not emptying our stress buckets, but we're filling our meaning buckets instead. And that really does create that sense of connection and that meaning within those people that you work with. So that's been a huge, I think, benefit for us at CG Infinity.
Meaning bucket. That must
Yes.
be
Works
for
music
me.
to your ears, Alise.
Thanks much.
Alise, from your perspective, I was scrolling through your feed and there was one episode where you talked about joy and wonder at work. I would love for you to expand on that.
Yeah, it's just so yummy. So what's fascinating in the work that I get to do that I really so appreciate is, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I do see that our consciousness wave is rising. So now we've long accepted the need for everyone, including our leaders, to be emotionally intelligent. Great, that's accepted. But now we're starting to see that there's room and there's hunger for people to want to go into what I would call Maslow's higher B values, higher attitudinal B values, where you get into the gratitude, joy, wonder, and awe. Those kind of emotions are really elevating and opening and enlivening. And the more you can presence those in the workplace, now we get into innovation. Now we get into real excitement. People are passionate about what they're doing. They're innovating new things. And that's humanity at its finest, right? When we can be grateful for each other, we can take joy in watching Janet lead a meeting where she just opens the hearts of these people, that we can feel that. and we're open to that, to receiving that. So we're seeing now that there are organizations that are actually cultivating things like wonder in their cultures, joy into their cultures, and that's part of what we do as well, is helping to steward that inside culture. So when more people can experience those things, now we're also countering the well-being problem, the loneliness problem, because people are able to show their true selves in a more authentic way that is magnetizing. People want to be around that kind of openness and share. So that's how I'm seeing those kinds of higher level attitudinal values being cultivated in organizations, and some of the beautiful benefits that's coming with that.
Do you have an example of when an organization does cultivate that, what that joy and wonder looks like?
Well, I guess I'll call out First United Bank here in Dallas. I know of them for lots of reasons. I'm a conscious capitalist. I'm on the board of that organization, and they're also one of our members. But they're an organization that is very well known for leading from purpose. And so we've mentioned this before. When you know the purpose of your organization and it's being well articulated and lived, and you are aligned by that, what happens is you as an individual are amplified by that. And what it does is it just makes you bigger. It makes you feel like you're mattering more in the world. And that translates to that joy also, and to that passion. We also see other organizations. I know of an organization, it's a healthcare organization that's done a lot of work with just passion projects, where they encourage people to do a passion project, whether it's related to what they're working or not, and spending some portion of their time doing it. Why? Because when people are passionate about something, that energy rises. Everybody benefits. And then we get this really cool thing called limbic resonance. And that's when literally people's brains are firing on the same energy level because they're picking up on that same energy. Well, now we're rising the level of energy in the organization. Everyone's getting positively infected.
I love it. My brain's firing up right now.
Those meetings where you feel that buzz.
Absolutely.
I love that. The buzz.
The buzz. That's what it is.
Yes.
That's fun.
Well, Janet, so much of everything that Alise and Melissa mentioned starts with leadership, right? Especially at the C-suite. Any advice for other leaders here in the audience of how we can further foster social connections?
It's carving out the time. I think the biggest responsibility for a leader, besides being the genuine, authentic, and the whole list I gave earlier, it's making sure that you have time for your employees to volunteer, to get that joy and wonder and awe and learn something together. Instead of, we have a lot of training requirements all the time, and as fast as technology is moving, we want to learn something together, but we can't ask people to do it on their own time. And I think it's the resource allocation and the balance of your employees' time, and how do you schedule their work that allows them to advance their learning, learn about generative AI, learn about cloud adoption, learn about all of the new and exciting things that generate that wonder and awe together. So how do we make sure that we are allocating enough time to our employees without impacting, of course, the business, but being able to generate that buzz? Because I promise you, if you designate that time and you carve out that time, your productivity is going to go through the roof, because you're going to have people truly engaged, truly empowered, and ready to rock and roll. And without carving that time out, I think you're doing yourself a disservice.
And Janet, you said without impacting the business, but I would argue it does the exact opposite. It does impact the business. It's a short-term and trigger, but it's a long-term investment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exponential gains on the other end of it.
Exactly.
And that energy comes from being able to do it with our, what I call work friends, right?
Yeah.
And I'd love to kind of close off here around work friendships, right? Because I think even for me, over the decades of working, some of my best friends have come from work, or, well, my husband came, I met him at work. So that counts too, right? Alise, from your perspective, how has work friends kind of brightened your life and made an impact on your life?
Oh, I have been so radically inspired over the years, and frankly, you know, one of my first early bosses hired me and fired me. That was actually tremendous because it allowed me to, he gave me the view that I could do so much more in my life. He said, you have to go because you can do so much more. So my work relationships have allowed me to further realize and cultivate my own potential and to know where I matter and give me a direction of what else I could pursue in my work that is meaningful to me, while also being crazily inspired by people that I get to work with side by side. And then that beautiful, that relationship, that precious relationship of working so intimately with clients inside of an organizations, their cultures, and you know, being witness to helping them work on their own wounds. Those are, for me, those are the precious moments of life. They're absolutely worth getting up for, and they come through work.
Janet, how have work friends made an impact on your life?
Celebrating their successes. I think it is learning so much from each other. You're surrounded all the time by people smarter than you in the room. And it really fulfills my life to see the people that I develop these great relationships with truly succeed and make the most out of themselves and support each other. That is the most fulfilling thing for me, I think. And those kind of relationships, if there's anything that I can do to help enable it or empower it, seeing them succeed, seeing them support each other is incredibly fulfilling for me. And that's really my purpose as a servant leader. That's what I want to do, is see the relationships, see other people succeed, and hopefully they'll want to see me succeed too.
And for those of you in the audience, tag your work friends in the comments and tell them what they mean to you as well. Melissa, for you, importance of work friends.
Work friends make you want to go to work every day. I mean, I am so lucky to get to work alongside, like you said, brilliant people, right? And these are the friends that they push you. And because you're true friends, they also have those honest conversations with you. And you can have those true, transparent conversations to really name it when you need to step up, to name it when you need to leave and take it to the next level, to name it when your work is not where it needs to be, and also to celebrate together when it really is. And to be able to have those moments of stress where you get to be authentic with your work friends and have those conversations and share those struggles, but also share those celebrations, that's huge. Like, I get to work with great people who are my true friends.
Yes.
It's fun.
What sparks joy for you at work, Alise?
Oh, every week. So one of the things I get to do, as you know, is host my podcast. And I meet amazing thought leaders that just turn me on to something brand new that I just didn't know. One of my favorite things to tell when I'm on air is how many times I've been on an airplane while I'm reading my guest books in preparation, and I'm on the airplane going, oh yes, that's right, and I'm highlighting, and people are back there going, crazy lady in 6B, crazy lady in 6B. And I'm like, I tell my guests when they come on air, I'm like, you embarrass me in public. People think I'm crazy. But that joy of learning something new, of seeing something different, of seeing somebody step into their shine when they didn't believe they could, is such a delight.
I love that. Janet, what sparks joy for you at work?
I nerd out on the technology, I think. The rapid pace of advancement and, excuse me, I think seeing how fast things change really gets me kind of jazzed up. I've been talking a lot about, how we deal with all the change and how we process it. And I've spent my time kind of reframing it to where, how do we anticipate and get really excited about the change? And the joy for me is seeing people really embrace that and embracing it myself and seeing that rapid pace of technology change. And what is there to expect? It's that wonder and awe of what's coming up next. So the anticipation for what's next around the corner, hopefully it's going to be positive. but that really gets a lot of joy for me. I like to see the rapid advancement and how fast things change. If you look back 20 years ago and how different even our iPhones are, and it's dramatic differences in what is the next 20 years going to bring.
Exciting. And Melissa, what sparks joy for you at work?
Everything. No, I would agree with the technology aspect, but truly the people and the relationships. I said it at the beginning and I'll say it again. I get to build relationships as my job, and that is a privilege that I don't take for granted. And that fills my bucket every day. It is a rarity, and it is something that is incredible. And it's a privilege, and to be able to intentionally and consciously connect with people is incredible.
It is.
And that sparks joy.
All kinds of people in the feed tagging their friends at work.
It's true. Yes, tag your besties, tag your work besties.
Thank you for doing that. It is Valentine's Day, so wish them happy Valentine's Day as well. So on that positive note, I hope all of you have taken away some ideas, solutions to kind of counter those effects of loneliness and isolation. And hopefully you can bring those social connection ideas and initiatives to your workplace as well. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Alise. Thank you, Janet, for all your contributions. I want to give some shout outs to our next show, which will be on Wednesday, April 3rd. We're going to talk all around the energy industry and the latest news around that and the impacts of that. And I want to read to you a quote from the U.S. Surgeon General from the advisory report. For those of you that are interested, definitely look that up. There's all kinds of great suggestions and initiatives in there. And I'll leave you with this quote. Our relationships are a source of healing and well-being hiding in plain sight. One that can help us live healthier, more fulfilled, and more productive lives. And given the significant health consequences of loneliness and isolation, we must prioritize building social connections the same way that we prioritize other critical health issues such as tobacco or obesity or substance use disorders. And together we can build a country as well as a world that is healthier, more resilient, less lonely, and more connected. So before we wrap up, I would love to encourage all of you to go out and call, text, visit someone in person in your professional life as well as your personal life. Make that connection, make that impact, leave some joy in their lives, and as always, people first. So thank you for tuning in, everybody. We'll catch you next time. Thank you.